Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. You are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show here on Sky News Monday morning. Flawed and immoral. The Prime Minister under fire this morning over his plans to tackle small boat crossings. We'll get reaction from the government today, speaking to the Science and Technology Secretary, Michelle Donelan, of course, Labour's Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, plus the CEO of Safe Passage UK. It's Monday, the 6th of March. Police searching for 5 young people reported missing after a night out in Cardiff have found 3 bodies.
As the government sets out its latest plan to tackle cross-channel migration, charities say it will demonise refugees. But a people smuggler tells us that the wave of migrants will just carry on coming.
Boris Johnson reportedly puts his father forward for a knighthood as part of his resignation honours list.
I've never murdered anyone. I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
Charles Bronson, Britain's most notorious prisoner, set to launch his bid for freedom today after nearly 50 years in prison. Deep freeze. The UK could experience its coldest day of the year this week as Arctic air moves over the country. We'll tell you where the coldest weather will be. Wooded glens and children firing flaming arrows into funeral pyres. We meet the pioneering undertaker who's trying to move away from Victorian value funerals.
United apart here. It breaks for
Oh dear. 7th heaven for Liverpool after a record thrashing of their rivals, Manchester United. Not everybody happy about that, as you can see. Good morning, everyone. Let's start with some breaking news from the last couple of hours. Police searching for 5 people reported missing after a night out in Cardiff have found 3 bodies. Let's get more on that, should we? Rachel standing by for us this morning. Rachel, what's happened? Goodness.
Well, this is a tragic and really shocking end to what started as a missing persons inquiry, a hunt for 5 young people who went on a night out in South Wales on Friday evening. Were last heard from at about 2 o'clock on Saturday morning and never came home. We've just heard in the past few hours from Gwent Police that a car has been recovered off the side of the A48 near St Mellons in Cardiff. In the car, they found 3 bodies and 2 people who were, it seems, miraculously still alive, but they are seriously injured and they've been rushed to hospital. Now, we understand the 5 people in this car are the 5 youngsters who went missing. They're 3 women, all in their early 20s, who were on a night out. They're from Porthcawl. They were in Newport on Friday night. They were last seen leaving a bar there at around 11:15 with 2 men who are in their mid-20s or early 30s. It seems they travelled together in a Volkswagen Tiguan and they were last heard from, as I mentioned already, at about 2 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, on Saturday, as the day went on, their family started to realise they hadn't made it home and an urgent missing persons inquiry was launched through the weekend, people getting more and more concerned for them. And now this really shocking discovery of the car, which, as I say, seems to have been involved in some sort of accident on this very busy dual carriageway, come off the road on the A48 and has now been recovered some 48 hours after the group were last heard from. Okay. Now, the police say that the IOPC have been informed, the families are being supported, and at the moment, as you'd understand, the road is closed in both directions while they try and work out what's happened.
I know you're going to update us further, aren't you? For now, thanks very much indeed. 2 of them in a critical condition. We'll get more on that and we will update you further. Meantime, the government's new plan to clamp down on channel migrant crossings have been condemned this morning as immoral. A ban on people who come to the UK illegally from claiming asylum is believed to be among the proposals. Here we go. Let's have a look at it in more detail. More than 45,000 people crossed the channel in small boats last year. That's 60% higher than in 2021. And another 3,000 migrants have made the crossing so far this year. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons is in Dunkirk for us this morning. Hello to you, Adam. I know that you've been speaking to these people smugglers, haven't you, over the last couple of days?
Yeah, that's right. And that is a huge and for a long time missing part of this story, Kay, is that we've spent years talking about cross-channel migration and the spiralling numbers. We've often heard from police and from charity workers here in northern France dealing with migrants and, of course, from politicians who have always, I think, used that expression of smashing the business model of people smuggling. The people that we've never heard from before in this story are the people smugglers themselves, and for very good reason, is that they tend to operate in the shadows. It is extremely hard to strike up any form of relationship, to try and understand the role that they're playing. Until now, for the first time ever, we have sat down and held an interview with one of these people smugglers to try to get an insight into what motivates them, into how they elude justice, in terms of do they see themselves as criminals, and also to ask that question, what would stop them? What would thwart the business model that has been quoted so often? And of course, this is politically charged. We know that this is one of Rishi Sunak's 5 priorities, is to stop small boats from crossing the channel here in northern France and going over to Britain. So when we sat down with this man, we won't identify him, we promised to maintain his confidentiality. There was so much that we wanted to know, and what I found extraordinary was that he gave us answers. We are meeting someone who earns his money by smuggling people across the English Channel. His insights are extraordinary. For one thing, telling me British police need to start looking much closer to home. We've obscured his identity and his voice.
Serb kaçakçılarla Britanya. Lodim xawan işo nav London'a sureto, nav Leeds'e, nav Birmingham'a, nav Newcastle'a. Bu sureto işiye. Biz niziye bu kulleme payakirde halkakan yere de oburu dua ahir neferiş koy sarak yötete oburu. O parelere payakı levlayka da biz nizo. Lev da anşe bu koy lev jan asantreta yere. Kurt zora tuane işakani barreo bu alve. همو قوميك ما قلت نعلم قاچاق ساين همو قوم يا لو دانش استراحه دغ خاني اجري بكري اعتيادي بناو خوي وني سار اللي اخرى اجازه بيانيه.
Some claim the French are not doing enough to stop these crossings, but the smuggler told us that, in fact, it was getting harder.
والله موانيك ايش كانوا بليس شوبانيرن تشاوشاركيه كان نقل حكومته يعني بلام حكومه بدبينيه تي إشارات لسقطك يا تشوبك تخينه بدبينه والله وقيار ما تدا خوي وسيا وبلا برو فرنسا بريطانيا نشتواني هر دقيقة بدبينه تشوبك درو وخلقك برو رو جنگل.
And this is what he's talking about. Ever more people setting off in small, overloaded boats heading across the channel. The Prime Minister says it's a major priority to stop these crossings, to thwart the people smugglers. Would it make a difference if people were sent to Rwanda when they arrived, as the British government has threatened to do this? Would that change the business model?
والله بو أمازون بيني رخلقتي بو بريطانيا. نقل رواندا هر خلق أو خلق بيني ربو أمازون هر خلق تي بو بريطانيا تي. فرقك بو هندي قوم فرقك بو هاتن كم بيتو بلام نقبو رجش بلي بنابرنية بريطانيا خلقتي.
On the beach, the remains of a failed crossing. The boat's engine broke down, the passengers fled, and the police have now slashed the dinghy so it can't be used again. We do see a sign of greater cooperation between the UK and France, but there are none of the promised British officers on view here. For the French and British governments, this is the result of organised crime, brazen illegality. But the smugglers don't see it that way.
Ama kaçakçıyetiğini kasbiye. İş kırdına, para payaga. Yarmeti halkada inaga. Ba kaçakçıyeti nazani. Ve nizbet bilay Kurda Araba ba kaçakçıyeti nazani. Ba her işe çoğuna halka işe gar restorani yakum o dukan delaki yaştegoş kasbiyege evtani. Halka parrenetu.
Rishi Sunak has pledged to stop small boats, like this one, by breaking the model of people smuggling. He is determined to succeed, but so are the smugglers who send ever more people across the channel. And at the moment, they do seem to be winning.
Adam, the big question is, how is this going to differ from what we heard previously from the likes of the then Home Secretary, Priti Patel? You know, she said that she was going to stop these small boats. More than 45,000 people came.
Yeah, lots of Home Secretaries have said they're going to tackle this. The difference this time is the government says that it is going to effectively stop people who arrive illegally from claiming asylum or to fast-track deportations to Rwanda or to other safe third countries. But there are myriad problems with that. Number one is that under international law, it's not illegal to come to Britain and claim asylum. So there is a disconnect between what the British government is saying and what things like the UN Convention on Refugees are saying. That's why charities who represent refugees are saying that this demonises people. A second thing is that, frankly, even if you bring this legislation in, it will take a long time and it will be subject to an enormous amount, no doubt, of judicial review. It sounds like strong rhetoric. The question is, can it really be put into practice?
Great question, and one that will be posed, I'm sure, throughout the course of the day. For now, Adam, thanks very much indeed. Adam live in Dunkirk there. Now, it's reported this morning that Boris Johnson has requested a knighthood for his dad in his resignation honours list. That as we expect the woman whose report brought down the former PM, that's Sue Gray, to formally request permission to work for the leader of the opposition. Only in British politics. Tamara standing by for us this morning. What on earth is going on, Tamara?
Well, claimed in the Times this morning that Boris Johnson's father, Stanley, well-known former MEP and well-known figure in Westminster, has been nominated for a knighthood. This is in the former Prime Minister's resignation honours list. It hasn't been published yet, but the Times say that this is what they understand is in it. Now, of course, if that proves to be the case, Boris Johnson's brother, Joe Johnson, a former minister, is already in the House of Lords. It's going to ignite a row about cronyism, and it will probably also ignite a row about propriety because, of course, a Conservative MP, Caroline Noakes, has accused Stanley Johnson of touching her inappropriately. It's also claimed in a biography of Mr Johnson that Stanley broke the jaw of his first wife, Charlotte, Boris Johnson's late mother. So there's sure to be some discussion about that. A spokesperson for Boris Johnson told me this morning that they don't comment on honours, and it will be some months before that list is expected to come out, but certainly that will be a controversial appointment if so.
And Sue Gray, I mean, you could say that she's the woman that brought down the Prime Minister. Others might say it's his own actions that brought him down, but certainly the report didn't help. She's now looking to work for the Leader of the Opposition.
That's right. She has quit her job, handed in her notice at the Cabinet Office and is preparing to work for Sir Keir Starmer, has been offered a job as his Chief of Staff. Now, we understand that this morning Sue Gray is going to be writing to the committee that vets all of these applications from ministers and senior civil servants looking to work in the outside world. And that committee, which is called ACOBA, the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, will recommend to the Prime Minister probably a length of time that she has to wait before taking it up. It could be months, it could even be a couple of years. Now, in that letter, she will have to say what the timeline is of her contact with Keir Starmer. Now, we know that his previous Chief of Staff left in November. Is that when they began talking? I understand it's not expected to be longer than a few weeks, but she will have to set that out because many Tory MPs are saying we need to know when she was speaking to him. Of course, her report into parties in Number 10 came out last May, and you'll remember that Boris Johnson was very pleased with it at the time and believed that he'd been vindicated.
OK, for now, Tamara, thanks very much indeed. So, what do you think about Stanley Johnson potentially getting a knighthood? You can let us know if you would like to. You can tweet me directly at Kay Burley. We've just been hearing about some of his antecedents. Is it appropriate or is it nepotism? Let us know your thoughts. Tweet me directly if you would like to at Kay Burley. Other news, Charles Bronson has a reputation as one of Britain's most violent prisoners, but he faces a public parole hearing this morning that could give him his freedom. Bronson has spent nearly 50 years in jail after his original 7-year sentence was extended many times because of his violent attacks on prison staff and fellow inmates. In 1999, he held an art teacher hostage for 2 days in Hull prison. Although he didn't physically hurt him, his victim was left so traumatised he never went back to work.
I've never murdered anyone. I've never raped anyone. What am I in jail for?
You know, he has an incredible violent streak, and it's very, very risky to release people like that. And also then, what happens if he is released? You know, the monitoring, all the, you know, he's going to be on a life licence, we know that. but it's a very dangerous man who could be released into society, very shortly.
Well, after almost 50 years behind bars, he told our crime correspondent Martin Brunt in a postcard that it was his mother's dream to see him free and happy. Still to come on the programme for you this morning, we'll speak to a refugee rights charity about the government's new plans to tackle illegal immigration. And after 8, I'll be joined by the Shadow Health and Social Care Secretary, Wes Streeting. Just before 9, I'm going to be joined by the British adventurer who's broken 8 world records while rowing in the waters off Antarctica 5 months after undergoing open heart surgery. Also making news for you today, figures exclusively shown to Sky News show the economic potential of women who want to work extra hours but can't because of childcare costs and availability. The former head of the UK's vaccine task force has claimed that Matt Hancock acted like a headless chicken during the pandemic. Writing in The Telegraph, Dr Clive Dix said the former health secretary was difficult to work with because he didn't take the time to understand anything. The newspaper has published a tranche of WhatsApp messages, which a spokesperson for Mr Hancock said showed a partial account that was entirely wrong. Fresh protests broke out in Greece yesterday after last week's deadly train accident. The station master accused of causing the crash has been charged with negligent homicide, while the Prime Minister has apologised for any responsibility the Greek government may bear for the accident in which 57 people died. Thousands have been left homeless after a fire at a Rohingya refugee camp in southeast Bangladesh. It happened at Cox's Bazar, which is home to over 1 million refugees. Police have not said how many homes had been destroyed, but said the fire was now under control. Ukrainian forces are under severe pressure in the eastern city of Bakhmut, but the founder of Russian mercenary force, the Wagner Group, has warned his troops are being deprived of ammunition and could be forced to retreat. He said this could cause the entire Russian front to collapse. Now, to what could be the most humiliating result in Manchester United's history. You have to go all the way back to December 1931 for the last time the Old Trafford club were beaten 7-0, and that was against Wolves. But this defeat came against arch-rivals Liverpool at Anfield. And before the game, Liverpool legend Graham Souness was laughed at for suggesting his team would win. Look for the reactions at the end of this clip.
I fully expect them to turn up today, and it's a long time, Kelly, since I've been as confident about a Liverpool win against United as I am today. I just feel they're going to turn up today. I think they'll be bang on it today. You ask these two chaps here, is it easy to play here if you're a United player? This is a difficult place for United to come, and I think the crowd will play a part today as well.
Afterwards, Salah tweeted, "An extraordinary day for all Liverpool fans. I'm honoured to keep making history with this great club." Here's how two club legends reacted as those goals were scored. Former Liverpool captain Jamie Carragher and ex-United player Gary Neville. It's fair to say they showed contrasting emotions. Let's have a look, shall we? OK, I think...
He's got a chance, he's got a goal! Reach Harvey Elliott here. Headed in by Darwin Núñez. Oh, they're carving Manchester United apart here. It breaks for Salah, who dispatches with vigour. By Henderson. And another one for Núñez. It's 5 here. So it's 2 goals to his name, 2 headers. Darwin Núñez also departs. Stefan Bajcetic is on. Now Salah, it's 6. Oh, that's the one they wanted. That is the cherry on the icing on the cake. Bobby Dazzler, Bobby Firmino.
Right. Let's bring in the Science, Innovation and Technology Secretary, should we? Michelle Donelan is joining us. Hello, Ms Donelan. Just checking that you're not a Manchester United fan this morning.
Morning. No, I'm not, Kay.
OK, good for that. Are you a Liverpool fan?
No. I support my local teams, but my husband is very much a Leeds supporter.
Oh, dear, I'm so sorry.
So our household is that by default.
Talk to me about small boats. Priti Patel promised to tackle small boats in last year's Nationality and Borders Bill, and yet we had a record 45,000 people more crossing the Channel. How is what Rishi Sunak is proposing going to be different?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Those figures are staggering when you compare where they were a few years ago. They were in their hundreds, and it's important that the government does tackle this. It's why the Prime Minister made it one of his top 5 priorities. It's why we've already taken action. We got that record agreement with the French government last year, but that's not enough. That's why we're bringing forward legislation. The details will be published this week, and the basic principle will be that if you travel here illegally, then it's not OK to stay, which I think is common sense and the right approach.
It's not illegal, though, is it, to seek asylum? It's illegal to smuggle people into the UK. Shouldn't the smugglers be the ones that you're going for?
I think it's got to be proportionate, and of course we want to tackle criminal gangs. That's why we've acted specifically to do that. But we do have to say it is not OK to travel here illegally, especially as we know many of those people are travelling across many safe countries to get here in the first place. And if they're travelling here illegally, they shouldn't be allowed to stay. We cannot take everybody. As much as we would love to, we just cannot. And we have to have a system that works. And that's why we're bringing forward this legislation. It's why the Prime Minister has acted. As I said, we got that record deal with France. We've done a deal with Albania. We've also invested in more people to help us process and get through the immigration backlog. In addition, we're getting people out of expensive hotels. This is a government that recognises this is something that people care deeply about and is acting to address it.
But again, Minister, it's not illegal to seek asylum. It's illegal to smuggle people. We were speaking to a smuggler. I'm not sure if you've seen our exclusive report. He tells us that most of the smugglers are based here in the UK. What can we do about it?
Well, what we can do is bring forward the legislation, which is exactly what we are doing. I don't think it's right for people to travel across many safe countries to get here and then choose to try and seek asylum via illegal routes. That simply cannot be acceptable.
Illegal,
That's
Minister.
why we're bringing forward this legislation.
It's not illegal,
But
Minister.
as I'm saying, it is people trying to secure asylum via illegal means by
Seeking
travelling
asylum is not
across
illegal.
many
Trying to
safe
seek asylum
countries.
is not illegal, Minister. It's not. What's illegal
Well, no,
is
but what
trying
we're
to
saying
smuggle
is that
people
these are-
across the Channel. That's what's illegal.
So what we're saying, Kay, is that there are safe routes to get into this country. That is the correct process, not to travel here on small boats across the Channel after you've gone through many safe countries. And we do know that a lot of the people on those boats are actually economic migrants, not genuine asylum cases. And as a country, we have to have robust processes in place to deal with that. That's why this Prime Minister has made it a priority. It's why we're coming forward with legislation on top of all the other things that we've done on this agenda so that we can deliver and make good on that pledge to the British public.
Most of those that seek asylum, at least 2/3, are allowed to stay in this country anyway because they do receive their status here in the United Kingdom. So what is it that you actually want to happen? Are you saying that we should change the rules so less than 66% can stay?
Well, I think we've been quite clear that the principle of the bill is if you travel here via those means, you will not be allowed to stay. Now, the details of that bill
66%
will be coming
do.
out over the coming days.
And yet 66%
But the details
do.
will be coming out in the coming days. Well, yeah, it won't be that 66% because logic dictates if we're saying that if you come here via those means you can't stay, then 66% of them won't be able to stay because we're changing that. We're saying that's not OK.
OK. As I said, Priti Patel did say that last year and that didn't change much. But let's see what's in the detail in the coming days. Let me move on to Sue Gray. Lots to talk to you about. Sue Gray next, potentially the next new Chief of Staff for Sir Keir. What questions do you have about her appointment?
Well, I think it's less about what I have as questions and more about how the process was followed. There will be people looking into this from the Cabinet Office side, and of course her appointment would have to go through a COBA, which is the correct means for them to assess the next stage in her career, having followed her civil service career, and whether it was done throughout the correct processes and whether she can take up that new office. So we need to wait to find out some of those details that come forward.
But you acknowledge that she was politically impartial when she did the Partygate report.
Well, she was a leading civil servant who obviously swore and accepted the civil service code, in which one of those key requirements is impartiality.
And so you think that she was impartial?
Look, I think that that was not the question here. The question is,
yes, it is.
how
the one
did
I'm asking
this new job offer come about?
Do you think she was impartial when she did the report?
I have no reason to believe she wasn't, Kay. She was a civil servant who signed up to the Civil Service Code. I think what people are mainly concerned about here is what process has taken place for her to acquire this new job. Have talks taken place when potentially they shouldn't have, etc.? These are the questions that need to be looked at and answered, and a COBA need to be allowed to do their job and review this.
OK, but she was impartial when she did the report. What about the former Prime Minister nominating his dad for a knighthood? That's surely nepotism at its finest, isn't it?
OK, I think that's speculation at this stage. Obviously, we've seen a report in the media today, but that's as much as we know. So who knows whether that's true or not.
Would you support it?
Well, it wouldn't really be down to me. I don't sign off those appointments and those honorary positions. Of course, prime ministers and previous prime ministers can then nominate people for peerages, for different types of categories of honours.
I understand.
And we have that system in place, which has worked successfully for years.
But you'd be happy for him to be a knight, would you?
Sorry, Kay, I missed that last question.
Yeah, I just said, would you be happy for him to be a knight of the realm?
Well, let's wait and see before we start speculating on ifs and maybes, hey?
OK, talk to me about the reason that you joined us today, growing the economy via tech and science. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so again, the Prime Minister's made many of his key 5 priorities based on the economy, cutting inflation, getting down the debt and growing the economy, which is fundamentally important to improving people's lives, getting them better paid jobs. And how do we do that? We do that via the true engines of growth, science and technology, to spur on innovation. What we've done today is outline a strategic framework of how we get there by 2030. That roadmap, if you like, with action plans tagged onto it. But also, we're acting in the here and now too. We've attributed £370 million to new initiatives, including in things like AI, including in things like money for tech challenges, so that we can push through new technology and be at the forefront, creating those better paid jobs for British people here in the UK.
OK, it's great to talk to you, as always. Look forward to seeing you in the studio soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Kay.
Looking at the papers for you this morning, the Mail says people arriving in small boats could be deported and face a lifetime ban from the UK. That's what the Daily Mail is saying this morning. The Times also leading on government plans to deal with irregular migration. The Daily Express says success in stopping migrant crossings could prove to be an election winner for the Tories. The Guardian has human rights groups saying the plan is unworkable. The Eye reports the Prime Minister and Chancellor will rule out cutting corporation tax in this month's budget. And the Telegraph continues its leaking of Matt Hancock's messages. They claim he rejected advice to cut the 14-day COVID quarantine period. Large parts of Scotland and northeast England are waking up to severe weather warnings for ice and snow this morning, with temperatures expected to drop still further. Let's get more, should we? Our meteorologist Steph standing by for us. Hi, Steph. It's going to be, what, the coldest day of the year this week?
It's going to be the coldest blast of the year. Yeah, that's true, Kay. I guess you were enjoying seeing the longer days and the daffodils, but nobody told the weather we were supposed to be heading towards spring now, and we've gone back to deepest, darkest winter. So we're already seeing that very cold air over parts of Scotland. It's now edging into parts of Northern Ireland as well. So the Met Office have issued a weather warning. We've got one for Monday and for Tuesday. It's a strange sort of shape, really, but it just shows where we're exposed to the northerly winds, because that will bring us our snow showers. We could see just 2 to 5 over the lower levels, but over the higher ground, over the 2 days, we could see up to 20 centimetres of snow. And you can see that snow just edging a little bit further down there as we head through the day on Tuesday. So for the south today, it's actually going to be relatively mild. We're looking at around 7 or 8, but that cold air is already in the north and it's gradually going to sink its way southwards. And as it does so, as we see those showers fall, they could turn icy as we head through the night as well.
And have a look at this. Snow's hurtled down a mountain in Utah in the US, but it was well planned. Just look at all of that white powder during an avalanche mitigation operation. It meant drivers around Utah's Cottonwood Canyons were stuck due to the snow. Wow. Wouldn't be on the receiving end of that, would you? And with parts of the world experiencing extreme weather conditions, let's have a look at the impact of climate change on the planet. Here we go, right half of the screen, using a little bit of coal today, a lot of gas, just over a fifth of renewables. Top left-hand side is how the temperature has increased since 1880, 1.27 almost degrees. And here, the millions of tonnes in CO2 emissions via the University of Oxford. Coming up in just a few moments' time, we're going to be talking Toblerone and cheese. Stay tuned.
That's Toblerone.
The Swiss chocolate maker Toblerone will have to remove the image as part of its production moving to Slovakia, and under Swiss law, products can only use national icons if they're almost entirely made within the country. And in another blow for the Swiss, a court in the US has ruled that the name Gruyere can be used to label cheeses from outside of the Gruyere region of Switzerland and France. In a victory for American dairy groups, the court said Gruyere can legally be used to describe cheese regardless of where it is made. That was a lot of Gruyere to be said, wasn't it, this morning, on a Monday morning. Still ahead, a fluffy survivor is pulled from the rubble after a Russian strike in Ukraine. More on that. Hello again, everybody. Now let's bring you a happy ending from Ukraine, where a cat has been found alive after a Russian strike on a residential building. Here we go. This is a black kitten called Lisa. She was reunited with her owner by the Ukrainian State Emergency Services in the city of Zaporizhzhia. Despite the destruction and piles of debris being left in the wake of that Russian shelling, Lisa was miraculously unhurt. There's got to be a line there about one of her 9 lives, isn't it? Anyway, a short while ago, I spoke to the Science and Innovation and Technology Secretary, Michelle Donelan, and I put to her why the government is planning to ban anyone crossing the Channel from ever claiming asylum, when claiming asylum in itself is not illegal.
I don't think it's right for people to travel across many safe countries to get here and then choose to try and seek asylum via illegal routes. That simply cannot be acceptable.
Illegal,
That's
Minister.
why we're bringing forward this legislation.
It's not illegal.
But as I'm saying, it is people trying to secure asylum via illegal means by travelling across many safe countries.
Asylum is not illegal, Minister. It's not. What's illegal is
what
trying
we're
to
saying
smuggle
is that
people
these
across the Channel. That's what's illegal.
So what we're saying, Kay, is that there are safe routes to get into this country. That is the correct process, not to travel here on small boats across the Channel after you've gone through many safe countries. And we do know that a lot of the people on those boats are actually economic migrants, not genuine asylum cases. And as a country, we have to have robust processes in place to deal with that.
Well, let's bring in Beth Gardiner-Smith, CEO of Safe Passage UK. Hello, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning. What did you make of what the Minister was saying?
Well, I think she didn't really realise that seeking asylum anywhere in the world, and in the UK as well, isn't actually illegal, as you rightly said. And this is what the vast majority of the people who are travelling across on these small boats are coming here to do. And we know that because it's borne out by the facts that the government has recently published. You know, the countries that people are coming from are countries like Afghanistan, Syria, Sudan, Eritrea. These are countries that we know very well, are countries where people fear persecution, are fleeing conflict. And to give you an example, last year, just 22 Afghans were resettled to this country. You know, the government talks about safe routes being the alternative to people, but in practice, they don't exist.
Yeah, but then you've also got young Albanian men who fancy a better life here in the UK, and they're expecting the British taxpayer to pay for them.
It's true, there has been a significant increase in the number of people coming from Albania. But actually, if you look again at the statistics, you know, over half of people coming from Albania do actually receive protection in this country. And they do so because they're fleeing persecution in their home country. They're often victims of modern slavery and trafficking. And so what the government needs to do is to actually, you know, assess people's asylum claims rather than these, you know, I'm afraid, political gimmicks, you know, actually take the time to assess who has a valid asylum claim and take a decision to allow them to get on and rebuild their lives if they're coming from some of these countries.
But they're passing through lots of other countries before they get to the United Kingdom. They see us as an easy touch.
They are, but I don't think that's true at all. And in fact, you know, in France, twice as many people applied for asylum last year. In Germany, 3 times as many. So actually, it's a minority of people who are taking these dangerous journeys to come to the UK. Why is that? It's because, you know, I'll give you an example. We work with unaccompanied children in northern France, in Calais, who are getting on these boats at the moment. 2 years ago, they were able to come to the UK safely through a safe route that was family reunion, that was part of the EU system. But unfortunately, the government chose not to continue on with that safe route for those children. When we were able to get them paperwork to come to reunite with family on a Eurostar. And, you know, in a safe and orderly way. Now, those same children have no legal option, in many cases, to come here to reunite with family. And therefore, they're getting onto these small boats, risking their lives and ending up in hotels across the country.
They don't have to do that. They can stop at the first safe country, and that's not the United Kingdom.
If you're an unaccompanied child or, you know, an unaccompanied child... But it's not just
unaccompanied children.
It's not, but these are the cases that we deal with. We also deal with Afghans who are fleeing persecution, who served with our British armed forces.
I hear you,
and they have no safe ways.
We're talking about the Albanians who are particularly coming when they don't need to.
Well, actually, we're talking about everybody, because this government's plan is suggesting that we're going to ban the right to asylum for anybody coming on these boats. And that's many nationalities: Afghans, Albanians, Eritreans, Sudanese, people who are vulnerable, and we should be showing the standard internationally by assessing their asylum claims quickly, offering them protection if they need it, and letting them rebuild their lives.
But the British government is doing the British people's bidding, and a lot of British people do not want asylum seekers to find themselves on British shores. And we've seen the outbreaks of violence in hotels where asylum seekers are being held.
Which is awful. But actually, I think if you look across the country at what people and communities have done for Ukrainian refugees, that tells us a very different story about
people. Can you make the comparison between Ukraine and Albania?
I think you can make the comparison between... You can talk about the British public's attitude towards refugees. And if you look at what we've done for Ukrainians, opened our communities, opened our homes to them, you know, I think most people across the country believe that if you're fleeing war and persecution, you should get a fair hearing and you shouldn't be detained in mass detention centres, as this government is proposing, indefinitely for the rest of your life.
So, we're at an impasse at the moment. The government say they're going to bring in stricter laws, and we're going to hear the details from as early as tomorrow. What are you most concerned about that the Prime Minister might say?
Well, I think this ban on people claiming asylum coming across the Channel is the most serious, and also the absence of any plan to offer safe alternatives to people. That's what we really need to see from this government now.
Isn't that what Rwanda would be, though? People would be able to find themselves in a safe place in Rwanda. Why do you object to that?
Well, Rwanda is not a safe country for very many people. As the courts have rightly said, you know, they've prevented individuals from being deported there because they're worried about people's safety. And in fact, that plan would only, you know, if it ever got up and running, would only deport, you know, a few hundred people a year.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're not really talking about practical alternative solutions that are, you know, moral solutions as well. And unfortunately, what the government's proposals suggest is that we're going to see people detained, tens of thousands of people detained potentially right across the country, indefinitely, men, women and children, as been suggested by this government, without giving them an opportunity to rebuild their lives and with no prospect of sending them to another country, which we, you know, because in many cases they're fleeing war and persecution.
So you just think anybody who wants to come should be able to come?
That's absolutely not true. No, but we need safe ways for those who have asylum claims that should be heard and who have family here and community ties to be able to come here and get a fair hearing. And that's our responsibility as a country. Many countries across the world take in refugees. In fact, the UK has it takes in a small number every year, and we should be doing our bit, just as we've done with Ukrainians, to help those who are fleeing war and persecution seek a better and to be able to rebuild their lives.
And those who aren't should be repatriated?
Those who don't have an asylum claim here should have a fair hearing, and if the decision goes against them, you know, that's the decision. That's the point of an asylum system. But at the moment, we don't have an asylum system that's working. We have over 160,000 claims that are waiting for a decision. That's what the government needs to be focusing on, getting a grip on the asylum backlog and sorting out the system so people aren't stuck in hotels, people are able to get a fair hearing, have a decision on their claim, and if it's positive, rebuild their lives.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Much appreciated. Time now for a look through some of the photos that have caught our eye today, and it's over to India, where yesterday's Hindus celebrated the Holi festival. Oh, it's very colourful, isn't it? Hindu devotees crowded around a modified 1921 Rolls-Royce car carrying an idol of deity Krishna through heritage landmark Howrah Bridge in Kolkata. These little girls were photographed trying to put paint on, on each other, as is the custom during the festival. How lovely. Joyful. Innocence of youth. Now, the Fire Brigades Union is awaiting the outcome of a ballot on a new pay offer. A strike by firefighters was put on hold while union members consider the revised offer. If the action had gone ahead, it would have been the first UK-wide fire strikes in more than 2 decades. Joined now by the General Secretary of the Fire Brigades Union, Matt Rack. Hi, Matt. It's good to see you again. How are you? So,
good, thank you.
Will you be going on strike or not?
It looks like we won't be. We get the results of our ballots this afternoon at 2 o'clock. It's counted by an independent scrutineer, so we don't know the full outcome, but all the indications we've got are that our members are likely to accept that revised pay offer. So we look like we will have avoided a strike in the fire service.
So tell us what you were offered and then what the revision was.
So our pay rise is due on the 1st of July each year, and in June last year we were offered a 2% rise. Which was very rapidly rejected, and we began a campaign, and by then inflation had obviously significantly taken off, and we then got a revised offer of 5% in October last year, which we put to a ballot of our members, and our members voted by 79% to reject that, and we then moved to a strike ballot, and our members again voted overwhelmingly for a strike if necessary. We had an emergency meeting with our employers in February, and they came with a revised offer, which was for 7% for 2022 and a second-year offer of 5% for 2023, plus a few discussions around issues that we've got concerns about. And we considered that. Our executive then recommended that, and that's out for consultation. So our members have an individual vote on that. As I say, that vote will be counted and finalised this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
It's less than other public sector workers. Some other public sector workers will be receiving. Why do you think it's acceptable?
It's more than many have, and we have disputes in many parts of the public sector. I think it shows the advantage of being able to sit across the table with your employers and negotiate. We don't have a pay review body, for example. We don't want a pay review body. I think they seem pretty widely discredited in the eyes of hundreds of thousands of workers covered by them. And certainly, we're not sugarcoating this. For year one of 2022, it will be below inflation, although better than was originally offered. For year two, 2023, if predictions are correct, then it would be slightly above inflation for that year.
We don't know yet, though, do we?
We don't know
wait
yet.
and see what inflation is doing. Soon, if the government legislates accordingly, you won't be able to go on strike.
Well, it's an outrageous attack as far as we're concerned. Clearly, nobody wants to strike. Strike is a difficult thing for any group of workers to do, and particularly workers in the fire and rescue service. But it was clearly one of the factors that improved the dialogue with our employers. And I think this is an attempt to reduce the bargaining power of ordinary working people, simply as a way of forcing their wages down, and it seems to us completely undemocratic to do that.
But should blue light workers be able to go on strike? You're going to say yes, of course, but I mean the police are not allowed to, are they?
Well, the police are in a very different position. Their rights were attacked in 1919. We are not police officers. We're civilian workers. We work for local authorities, the same as people who
So do the
clean
police, though, don't they?
No, they work for. They're employed by the chief constable. They have a different legal position than firefighters. Our members are civilian employees. They have the right to join trade unions, as they do across most of the world. And we want to be treated in the same way as other civilian workers.
So we'll know at 2 o'clock this afternoon?
We'll know at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Thanks, Matt,
very
as
much.
always. Thank
Thank you.
Now let's move on to other news for you. This is an interesting story. Tennessee has become the first US state to ban public drag performances in public spaces. Other states are proposing similar legislation. Why? Let's get some reaction in just a moment or two from Jamie Campbell. You will recognise Jamie. Actually, watch him in this and then I'll tell you more. Here he is. Hiya.
Hello, Kate. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for getting up early
Of
for us
course.
this morning. So talk to me about what's going on in the US and the fact that they want to ban drag performances in public. What's all that about?
It's absolutely ludicrous, I think, because so basically in Tennessee they have now brought in a law that bans adult performances and adult entertainment as a whole, and it groups drag into that. And drag is just such a massive spectrum of things. And yes, there are adult drag performances, of course they are, in nightclubs. But then there are drag queens.
I may or may not have seen some.
Yes, I'm sure you have. But then, yeah, there's drag that is suitable for children. I mean, we've had pantomime, which is a massive...
Oh, no, we haven't.
Oh, yes, we have. And that is, a big, massive part of it. So I don't get what this law is trying to do, apart from just stir up anger and hate and just open up this as a way to attack the community.
And how do you think the community will respond to that?
I mean, like everything, the community, we've been through so much over the years, so I don't imagine we'll take it lightly. But at the end of the day, drag is just a spectrum at the end of the day, and it's just like policing art. It's where is the line here? I think that is the problem. Like, the law is so vague. And yeah, like what? We just ban dresses in general, or like makeup, or having fun, and that's just all drag is, really. And
Pride next, or whatever.
Exactly, just before Pride Month as well.
Yeah. So Governor Lee, there's an image, he's a Republican, you'd be surprised to hear, from his high school years, apparently showing the future governor dressed in drag himself.
Yeah, that is it. He's wearing like a pearl necklace and a cheerleader outfit. And when questioned on this, Governor Lee has said, oh no, but that's different. You can't compare this. So he's basically saying it's okay for him as a straight man just to dress like this. But there's a difference when other people do it.
What would you say to him in response?
I'll just say, get your pearl necklace back out, girl, and just join us for Pride Month and show that drag is fun and... yeah, just sissy that what, girl?
Would you be concerned that when stuff like that happens in the United States, it could spread to other states very quickly and perhaps casting an eye over the Atlantic to us?
Well, that's it. It's poisonous. It just starts somewhere and then it goes out and out and out. And I think at the end of the day, things like this are put out there to distract us from the real issues, like gun violence, for instance, in America, that is just the real culprit and the real danger, because at the moment I'm sat here talking about this with you and other people are over there. Yeah, it's just a distraction technique.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose Governor Lee, if he was sat here, he would say that the bill's only stopping children from seeing sexualised acts, and that is appropriate.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, drag is not always sexual, and most of the time
but
it's
we've agreed
not,
that it
like,
can be.
I mean, it can be, but I know me as a performer as well. I do shows at Pride Month and for children, and we tailor our act for that. Like, we wouldn't be performing a really provocative routine for children. And yeah, like I keep saying, it's a spectrum. And yeah, I agree. Children shouldn't necessarily be exposed to explicit content. But yeah,
when did
drag
you do
isn't
your
just
first drag
that.
performance?
I did my first drag performance at 16. And I remember seeing my first ever drag performance when I was maybe 8 years old in Lanzarote. Since we had a videotape of that performance, and looking back on it when I was older, like, yeah, there was maybe sexual things in that routine, but as a child, I didn't notice that. Like, I just saw the glitter, the cam, the makeup, the feathers, and I loved it. And I think that's the thing with children. They don't focus on the undertones and things like that. Like in pantomime, for instance, even, like, there's a lot of sexual undertones in the jokes and stuff, but it just goes over children's heads,
It's for
really.
all audiences.
It is, it's for all audiences.
Yeah. And what are you doing now?
I am writing a book. I am staging my drag comeback, funnily enough, which is going to be coming out during Pride Month as well. And I've got my fingers in lots of little pies. So, yeah.
Will you talk to us during Pride Month?
Of course, yes.
Fantastic, yeah.
And I might wear something a little bit more theatrical.
Oh, fantastic. I was just going to say, I mean, could you maybe be a little bit more lively next time you're here? I'm kidding.
I mean, you know me, I'm shy, stop.
It's lovely to see you as
too.
always. Thank you, my darling.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot for coming in. A quick look at whose birthday it is today. None other than the basketball big man's birthday. Here he is, Shaquille O'Neal. He is he's 51, and apparently he is 7 foot 1 inch tall, which is only slightly taller than me. I don't know why you're laughing, Matt, behind the camera. We'll see you at the top of the hour.